Welcome to Regent Park TV. I'm Thunder, and today we are privileged to share the compelling, heartfelt journey of Isabella Gamk, a longtime activist and advocate whose resilience and courage resonates deeply within Toronto's downtown east, especially in our Regent Park community. As a transgender woman who began her transition at age 56, Isabella's story embodies hope and tenacity. In this insightful interview, Isabella will discuss her advocacy work through her organization, POOF, Protecting ODSP OW Funding, where she timelessly fights against poverty and homelessness. She'll shed light on pressing issues surrounding the Ontario Disability Support Program and Ontario Works.
You got to fight poverty, and that's a really hard one to fight because the politicians don't want to talk about poverty.
Isabella's activism has been defined by her years of protesting and organizing for social justice. Her passionate commitment to ending homelessness and advocating for marginalized communities has made her a beacon of hope. She will also reflect her experiences living in social housing, emphasizing the need for comprehensive solutions to challenges faced by vulnerable populations. As Isabella prepares for her upcoming medical assistance in dying procedure, she invites us to contemplate profound questions about existence and legacy. With the companionship of her beloved chihuahuas, Sparkle and Glisten, she emphasizes the importance of compassion and connection, even in the face of life's most challenging moments. Her journey is not just a testament to survival, but a call to action for us all, urging us to advocate for more just and compassionate society for everyone in Regent Park and beyond.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. My name is Isabella Gamk. I lived most of my life as identifying as heterosexual, but I always knew since the age of 12 that I was in the wrong body. And due to circumstances in life, and I guess maybe a little bit of cowardice, I never came out until like 8 years ago. But it's been quite the journey. I was diagnosed with HIV, being HIV positive 32 years ago. And when I was diagnosed, they told me that I probably had HIV for 5 to 10 years prior to being tested. So if you average 7, you could say, and add that to the 32, you could say 39 years, and it takes it back to about 85 that I picked it up, maybe. I knew I wasn't gay, but I guess I was kind of identified a little bit as bi sometimes, but mostly identified as heterosexual. It just saved a lot of hassle. But I decided 8 years ago that it was time to come out and live as my true identity. And I've been fighting for people for a long time. Like since I've had HIV, I've been involved in discussions around healthcare and housing and poverty for pretty much for about probably about 25 years. I've been involved. At least 25 years or so. And 6 years ago, I started a group called POOF, Protecting ODSP OW Funding, to fight for people on disability on ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program, and on people on Ontario Works, which is like welfare. And because it's shameful what goes on, I was interviewed in 2018 during the second time I attended a trans pride march, and they asked me about trans rights, and I said, there's lots of people working on trans rights at the moment. I said, but there's nobody seems to be fighting for people on ODSP and OW. And it was like about 2.5 months later or so, I started POOF protecting ODSP OW funding. And, we've done a lot of protests. We came out swinging. It was like, POOF, we're here, and we want a 100% increase. Everybody was arguing for the 3% at the time to be reinstated, that Catherine Wynne instated just before the election in 2018. And when Doug Ford came to power, he cut it in half to 1.5%. And, it was just ridiculous that everybody, all these groups that were supposed to be helping us and all these politicians were all yelling and screaming for this 3%, which really did nothing to help anybody. It was like $11 or something, And it was just shameful. The extra 1.5%, like 1.5% was about $11. So the extra, what they were fighting for was another $11. You know what I mean? And it was like, so you're fighting for a total of $20. Well, $20 added on to our check back then of $11.69 would have made it, $11.89 or $11.95, maybe. So it just back then rent for a one-bedroom apartment was $1,100 to $1,200. So we said, we wanted ODSP to be and OW to be doubled. We want, because if the rent, the shelter allowance at that time was $497, and if you doubled that, it would have brought it up to $994, and rent it was $1,100 to $1,200 for one bedroom. So if you would have doubled the basic needs allowance at the same time, they would have been able to put $100 or $200 in towards their rent and find a one bedroom apartment. So it's been a hard fight, It took me a lot of years to get people to stop demanding for that 3%. It took me a couple of years, 2.5 years for everybody to stop finally demanding that 3% be reinstated, And it's like now it's the same fight over because the people, people are picking up on this double ODSP, and chanting it in all these groups and, politicians and that. They're doing that now. Like, this is 6 years later. But, right now it's 13.18 for ODSP total. So if you double that up to 13.68, sorry. So if you double that, it's 27.36. Now, if you look on the City of Toronto website for a one-bedroom apartment, it says $2,200 to $2,400 or something. That's the average market rent if you Google it for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto currently. So, if you get rent evicted or dem evicted and you're a disabled person, you should be able to rent another place in your community, in your neighborhood. You shouldn't be forced into homelessness and into a shelter and then into another housing place somewhere far away from all your friends and contacts and everything else. It really hurts people with mental health issues and stuff. Nobody should be getting forced out of their communities. This is a big problem we have, and how it's being sloughed aside. I ran for mayor to try twice the last two elections to try to bring awareness to our problems. And it's sad because we have people yelling for rent control and people wanting higher wages, but nobody's really demanding higher wages as they should be. And I think in order for people, if somebody's working and they're living in a one bedroom that they can afford at the time, and they're working and they're surviving or whatever, and they get rent evicted or dem evicted, they should be able to rent another apartment in their neighborhood. They're working, they did nothing wrong. You know what I mean? So the government should make sure that that they can do that. So if they can't, because the rent has gone up in their neighborhood so many dollars, and they need something to help, then the government should give them a subsidy check. So the government should guarantee, the federal government should guarantee constitutionally that all Canadians, that need it, are guaranteed average market rent by postal code, so that people aren't forced out of the neighborhood. This would kill two birds with one stone. The federal government would then make sure that rents aren't too high and unaffordable, and they would also make sure that wages were kept up to date so that people could afford, so they wouldn't have to pay so many people amount of money to make up for their rent. This is how you hold the government accountable, the federal government accountable. Because what's going on right now, the narrative that it's okay for all these people to get kicked out of their neighborhoods and nobody's saying anything or fighting back, it's just wrong, you know. You know, RGI housing is okay if you can get a transfer, but when you can't get a transfer and you can't get moved, it's a jail. You know, if you have problems with noise at nighttime and you want to sleep or something, you know, or you got problems in your neighborhood with somebody that's bothering you or bullying you, and you want to get out of that neighborhood or somewhere, and you want to live somewhere else, or even it's just too noisy in that neighborhood because of traffic noise or whatever else, and you want to live somewhere quieter, like out in the suburbs, you know, in your old age, you're disabled or whatever, for some peace of mind, you should be able to do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's wrong that people are not being given enough money to live on and subside on. And people would rather shame the people that are homeless and stuff instead of shaming the government for their policies that keep them homeless. Why should everybody with disability be funneled into friggin' poverty and homelessness? You know what I mean? And if they get rent evicted, or evicted for any other trivial reason. A lot of landlords now are asking for 6 months rent up front. You know, they don't want people in ODSP and OW renting there because they got such a bad rep. And then why do we have a bad rep? Because of politicians. You know, not everybody that's owning ODSP and OW is homeless. Not everybody on ODSP and OW is addicted to drugs, you know, has mental health issues. You know, many just want to have a life, you know. So it's sad. This little one here is Sparkle, and he's 5 years old. And when he was about a year old, I got it because I have a lot of health issues. Besides long-term HIV, I've got osteoporosis, scoliosis, degenerative bone disease, degenerative disc disease. I got arthritis in my spine. I can hardly turn my head and my neck. I have carpal tunnel syndrome, both wrists, plantar fasciitis, hammertoes, and I have bunions on my feet. I've got severe IBS, acid reflux. I got a damaged esophagus and Barrett's disease. The food goes in my lungs sometimes. I use a FODMAP diet to try to control my IBS. I have some pre-cancer going on my bottom. I have lots of, I have complex PTSD. I have depression, seasonal affect disorder, anxiety, and I have a little agoraphobia. So the dogs were really to... I got them so that they are my emotional support dogs, because complex PTSD is either fight or flight. So sometimes when you don't mean to argue with somebody, you end up arguing with them anyways. And then you regret it later and you get really depressed about it, and it's sad. But so I got him, and then about a year after I got Sparkle, the vet said to give him some heartworm medication, and it kind of scrambled his brains for a bit, and he was just lying around. I had to force feed him with a syringe, and for about a month, and then he slowly came around to eating. But I got Glisten for a support dog for him, so someone for him to play with. And I was supposed to get another Chihuahua, his size, but it was already picked out. I seen the picture of it. I named it Shine, but then it died. So then I was offered Glisten, and so we got Glisten, and Glisten's been a really good help. She's really good for Sparkle, and she's really good for me too. They're great company. They're very loving. I'm getting MAID, medical assistance in dying, on November 2nd. I'm having an exit stage left celebration of life party on October 26th. With dancing and karaoke. I want people to enjoy. I want people to have, celebrate that I'm going to be out of pain finally, because I've been in a lot of pain for the last 10 years. And it's been hard. People don't realize it because they see me out at protests.
The government, the only ones who get elected are the ones that are backed up by the country.
Go after the 1%er.
Please, I got lots of issues and you're just making it worse. So go away. No, we're not going to. What are you talking about compromise? You mean we won't give in to your demands? You want us to give in your demands? Well, no. When you keep repeating it, it's not a compromise. I've already said no. Take my answer. Why do you think you're going to try to convince me into some other answer? Why do you think you have the right to try to force me into agreeing with you? What gives you that right?
The last protest I did for ODSP and OW, because we want people to have, disabled people to have average market rent by postal code. But we, on August 1st, 2024, this year, we blocked Yonge Street for 3 hours at college. You know, I was lucky there was some construction material in the one southbound lane, so I was able to block the other southbound lane by myself with the wheelchair. And the other 3 people who showed up at the beginning of the protest, they blocked the 2 northbound lanes. So there was just the 4 of us with our big speakers and our microphone. You know, how is this? You know, we have 1 million people on ODSP and OW. We have all these groups that claim ODSP Action Coalition, Income Security Advocacy Center, you know, Acorn. But, you know, I've invited them all to our protests and stuff, but they don't come out to our protests on the street. You know, all these politicians I invited out to our protests on the street, where were they? Fred Han from CUPE promised during the Trans March he would come out to our protest. Never showed up, you know? But, you know, all these people will go to an environment protest on the street. They'll go to education protest on the street. They'll go to an environment, you know, a healthcare protest on the street, you know? So why can't they come out on the street with us against poverty? You know, and poor and disabled people, they're afraid they do something, they're gonna get cut off, half of them, or, you know, some of them, they don't want the public to know what their situation is, but, you know, it's really hard to get people to come out to a protest, you know? And you know, I've called out a lot of groups on their ableism because I called them out on their ableism. You know, they label me an enemy. They label me as someone who's uncooperative, someone who's not willing to negotiate, someone who's narcissistic in their demands. You know, that only my demands matter. Well, you know what? My demands aren't ableist. You know, and if your demands are ableist, I get to call you out on ableism. And if you refuse to change your demands and rather label me as an enemy so you can keep your ableist demands, you're still ableist. You know what I mean? So this is the big problem we have. Like, you know, they don't like me calling out their ableism. You know what? There's a protest this Thursday at Queen's Park, ODSP Action Coalition. Guess what? Guess who's going there to do a counter protest? Because they're simply asking for ODSP to be doubled.
Look what you're doing to Isabella.
Ableism! This is what we get when we want real solutions.
If you are living in poverty,
we want real solutions.
if you don't have access to transportation,
so if you got $2,700, $2,736, and you have to pay, you know, $2,200 to $2,400 for rent, you know, that would leave you $336 or to $536 left over for your basic needs, for your food, your transportation, your communication, your internet, you know, your laundry, your cleaning, everything. That's less than we get now for our basic needs. You know what I mean? People don't. If they can't do the math, then they shouldn't be friggin' advocating for us. All these people that have been doing this for years is the reason that we have a $586 shelter allowance for disabled people. How is that possible? Many disabled people in a wheelchair or with walkers or whatever, they need a 1-bedroom apartment. You know, they got a sleep apnea machine, whatever, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's just, where are these people that are supposed to be fighting for us? They're actually fighting for us. You know, I don't see them fighting. You know what I mean? But you know, it's sad because when I go, I don't know if anybody's going to go on the streets anymore. Like, there's no OCAP anymore. Acorns stick to the sidewalk. You know, we found out when we protest at Queen's Park, everybody that's at that protest is already on the same page. It's like preaching to the choir, you know? And the media, they don't report accurately or all of what's going on. You know, they'll if they do report, there's a little blurb. There was a protest for ODSP at Queen's Park. They want more money. And sometimes we're there for more money. They say, oh, we're there for more housing. You know, they did that when we blocked Yonge by Dundas before, too. That, you know, we were there for more money. They said that we were there for more housing. You know, and they don't hear the people's stories. They don't hear what the problem is. We're not allowed to give people logic and give people the numbers and have it aired over the media, because the media is owned by the 1%. And they don't want the public to know. They'd rather think that it's a choice for that people are homeless because it's a choice. People don't get it because we're not allowed to tell it publicly what's going on. You know, it just makes me so upset.
We're not opening up 2 more lanes to keep one. We're blocking the whole thing here. If I had more people, we'd block that ourselves. No, we don't need you to talk again in a few minutes. See, this is intimidation.
There's nothing wrong with being a protester. You know, I mean, some protesters are misled. There's many people that in the homeless community that are being misled. You hear where there's homeless people speaking up at a protest, and they're demanding affordable housing, and they'll never get affordable housing because even with their ODSP, they can't afford it. You know what I mean? So they're being misled into what they're supposed to be asking for. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to wonder if there's government agencies at work that are joining groups or organizations to mislead people so that they are ableist in their demands. You know, when groups keep being ableist and you call out their ableism year after year after year after year for 5 years, 6 years, and they don't change their demands so they're not ableist anymore, what's going on?
We can't afford to pay our rent. We can't afford to eat. We're scratching at the surface. Rebel rousing and causing a fuss. Rebel rousing and causing a fuss. They won't give enough cash to us. So
I've been fighting for this for a long time, and it's poverty. Everything is designed to smokescreen poverty. All the people that have been advocating for shelters and food banks over the years have been advocating to eradicate poverty. Maybe we'd be somewhere, but because we got shelters, like food banks were started like over 50 years ago as a temporary stopgap measure. A temporary stopgap measure. So, it's time to close the gap and end the temporary. I mean, over 50 years of temporary is enough. You know what I mean? It's not temporary, and shelters, you know what? We don't need more shelter. We have enough shelters. If poverty were eradicated, all this would disappear. The shelters, the food banks, that would disappear. You might have 1 or 2 shelters that you need for desperate situations. But, when you have people that are in abusive situations or an abusive situation with a partner or a roommate, and they have to become homeless in order to get somewhere else, to go somewhere else, because they can't afford to rent somewhere on their own, this is cruelty. Years ago, I asked my doctor to apply for MAID for me on the grounds of poverty, just to have it put on paper, just to send it into them, to see that, but I don't believe in using MAID to fearmonger people about poverty, and there's a lot of groups and some politicians that are currently doing so. The government's trying to force the disabled people to pick, MAID so they don't have to pay them. So the government's trying to kill them off and all this. Well, it's 2 separate issues. Because if you got rid of MAID, you still got to fight for more money. You still got to fight for more support. And as soon as you bring MAID into the discussion about poverty, people start asking questions about MAID and forget all about the poverty. Like, oh, can anybody get MAID? Oh, how long does it take to get MAID? What are the requirements for MAID? You know what I mean? Well, we're not talking about poverty anymore, are we? You know what I mean? So it does no good. You still people. It's 2 separate issues, and people do need MAID for when they need it. I've been in pain, a lot of pain, for about 10 years, and last year it was so severe that I stopped my meds and stuff, and it took a while. And then some of the pain went away when I stopped some of my meds. I've had a problem with side effects with medications for 30 years, and different medications, many medications I had side effects from, bad ones. And, but only some of the pain went away. But like I said, my neck is still stiff. I can't sleep very well. I have problems, with acid reflux and gas, and I can only lay on one side pretty much. Lay on the other side, I get gas buildup and pushes up acid reflux. Same if I lay on my back. And if I try to lay on my stomach, I can't turn my head enough to be comfortable. So, I can't, it's really awkward. I can lay on my stomach for maybe 10 minutes in different positions, my head a little bit, but it's very hard. And, even just going for an MRI and to lay still on my back is bad because I twitch a lot and stuff, when I'm laying down and stuff. It's just hard to get comfortable. And, I applied last year, October 23rd. That's tomorrow, right? October 23rd? So it's been a whole year. I just found like a month ago that I was going to get it for sure. You know what I mean? It's just been dragged on and on and on. And the doctors didn't get, the paperwork at first from the psychiatrist, and then when they got it, then they found out that even though my doctor and the psychiatrist agreed that I should be able to have it, they didn't want to be the ones to sign off on it. So the MAID doctor had to petition the provincial government to get another MAID doctor assigned to my case. And so that was finally done, and that MAID doctor agreed right away that, yeah, I should be able to get it. It's just, I've lost pretty much all my quality of life. I used to like to go and dancing, I used to like to do art, but I can't do anything really much anymore. It hurts my back, and, so, I mean, I can't even really do protests and advocating anymore. It hurts too much to try to put up flyers and stuff, and it's such a nightmare. I have such a hard time to get out the door, with my PTSD and my, my anxiety and my a little bit of agoraphobia, and it's just really hard to do things, But, I decided I wasn't going to do anything, but then I thought about it. I thought, you know what? Why not have a celebration, a party like before, while I'm still here? Because there's no sense having one after after I'm dead, But, I think I can't take painkillers because of my severe IBS, because they bind me up and cause constipation, and then I end up in the hospital, and that's even worse. You know what I mean? And it's horrible. So it's happened to me a few times, and so I don't do any painkillers. So and more supports. I have trust issues. So I used to have PSWs, and they wrecked a lot of stuff. And when I complained, I lost the PSWs, and I've been offered them again, but I can't. I just can't at this point have other people in my house. So. People that want to say, oh, more supports than that, you can do it. You know what? I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be laying in bed for 5 years or 10 years or whatever on one side. That, you know what I mean? And if I had a heart attack, or a stroke or something and couldn't speak, like I've had, some of my friends have had, and I know one friend that they kept trying to pull the feeding tube out of their nose. So at the hospital, they tied their arms to the bed. So if they did that to me and forced me to lay on my back and I couldn't speak, I would be in so much agony. It would be so bad. I just couldn't see myself living like that. I think that, if you want to solve issues, you got to face and, you got to fight poverty. And that's a really hard one to fight because the politicians don't want to talk about poverty. Stop being ableist so I don't have to be here to call out the ableism. The government has to start giving, I guess a basic income or, step up and fix this disability. I mean, the Trudeau government.
1.6% from social assistance.
So all these groups have been advocating for us for the last 30 years have dropped the ball. All the politicians advocating for us have dropped the ball. You know what I mean? It's legislated poverty. It's policies.
We don't family doctors.
Whatever. You want to arrest
the 2.5 million people who don't have family.
I think the eradication of poverty is the biggest issue. And if you did that, people could afford to live where they want to live. They wouldn't have to go into RGI housing. You know what I mean? Because that's just another smokescreen to poverty. It doesn't. Food banks, shelters, RGI housing, none of these things end or eradicate poverty. They just prolong and perpetuate it, and it just goes on and on. And if you want to get out of your housing, you can't. You want to give up Toronto housing, you're homeless because you can't afford to rent anywhere else. And that shouldn't be it, because if you're not happy with your housing provider, your landlord, you shouldn't be forced to have to stay with them. That's cruel and unusual punishment for a not crime of being poor or disabled. It's not a crime to be poor or disabled, so why are we being treated like criminals? No, welcome, Fred. Thank you so much for
Thank you
so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media, and for more information, check out our website.
you.